All right, we're entering the broadcast. Good old StreamYard, powered and sponsored by StreamYard. They sent me $1,000 check to do this. No, I'm kidding. They didn't.
Dude, I wish. Hey,
But
StreamYard, if you're listening, we will take sponsorship. Just know that.
I am just honestly, I don't even want the money. Literally, how easy this is to use, and after the issues I had with Stream Labs, it was. Oh my gosh, this is just night and day. And I love you can like highlight comments, but we have people showing up. Looks like we're already in here. Awesome. What's happening, Feast and Friends? Welcome to another live. I am super duper excited. We've only got one of the dynamic duo with us. At least Mr. Rudd was on time. Alex Rudd, for any of you that don't know Mr. Rudd, you already should. But Alex, you want to say hi, introduce yourself for anybody that doesn't know you?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? I'm really happy to be here with you, man. I've been waiting to do a live with you. I know you did one with me, and what I love about it is when you sent me the thumbnail for this one, I was like, "That's beautiful." I literally said, "That's beautiful," and he was like, "We got to mess with some people," and I was like, "And that's why it's beautiful." So when I had you on my live, we had to mess with everybody because I was exposing DEBO.
Oh yeah,
what's up? It was great. It was great, right? So, but what's up, everybody? My name's Alex Rudd. For you guys that don't know me, owner operator of Alex Rudd Fishing on YouTube. Obviously, I'm just a dude out here living in East Tennessee with a big beard that likes to go bass fishing, and I make videos about it and just kind of fun stuff, entertaining stuff, teaching moments, educational kind of fishing stuff. Just anything that I want to make, I make it, and I put it out there for the world to see and just see how it goes. So that's me, man.
And that's what I like about you and Ben. There's a couple things that are like real fishing, right? You hear that a lot. You just had, Mr. Balls on your channel, Mikey Balls, last night. I didn't get to watch, unfortunately, but he talks about real fishing, right? And that's what I like about you and Ben is a lot of the same stuff, that we have kind of on all our channels. You guys, obviously, from a boat more. I'm a little bit more bank orientated, just due to resources and what I've got around me. But a lot of the same stuff, like you said, teaching people, helping people, going out and just fishing and having fun. Right before Rudd and I went live, he said, "Yeah, we just had an awesome day. No big ones, but it was still amazing." And to me, that's what's important. And I've heard you say before, each fish is a clue, right? Each fish is a learning opportunity. It's not always about going out and catching 10-pound bass that you see on Instagram and, new PBs caught every other episode on some YouTube channels. It's crazy. And for a lot of new people out there, I think it can get a little disheartening, right? Because that's your expectation. That's what you're thinking. It doesn't always happen. So that's what I appreciate about you and Ben. Hopefully Ben will be joining us. I see we got some comments and stuff coming in. Guys, certainly feel free to leave comments, questions. It's going to be a laid back, fun stream. So I've got some kind of generic questions for Alex. We're going to talk about some spring lures, what we've been catching them on, and then just kind of go from there. So as you guys have questions for us, please leave your questions over in the comments. We're going to try to answer those, but otherwise we're just trying to have fun tonight. So
heck yeah. I got a question for you real quick.
Yeah, what's up?
You watching the fight tonight?
I'm not. No, crazy thing is, as much as I used to love it, like the past, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, I kind of fell out of love with it for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but
that's all right. I just got to see if Ngannou can get it done with Miocic. I just don't know, man. I'm all nerved out about it. You know what I mean? Like I don't get nerved out about a lot of stuff, but Francis Ngannou is a big bad man, and he scares me, and I don't even have to be in the ring with him. So I'm looking forward to it. Once we jump off here, we'll see what happens with that. So
okay, well, I won't try to keep everyone. What time are the fights on?
Oh, the main card doesn't come on till 10, so you're all good. Yeah, it's prelims right now. I'm not really worried about all that. Just
yet. And I know what you mean, because some of the fights back in the day when I was 100% like full bore everything MMA, you'd get nervous before fights, like your favorite fighter. Vanderlei Silva back in the day was my favorite dude. Back at Pride, and like I'd get before his fights, and he'd be doing the getting ready, and I would just be like so anxious, like yes,
yeah, dude, I love it, man.
We got a bunch of people rolling in. We got Fat Boy Fishing. I see my boy's looking for fish. What's up? What's up, fellas? Anybody that's just jumping in, thank you very much. Leave your questions over on the side in the comments. We're going to go through, kind of answer some fun stuff. So I know for Alex, we talked a little bit before. What are you catching them on right now? I know everybody's a little bit different. I went out today. Today I caught a whopping 2 fish. which is I doubled my output from the last time because I caught one fish. It's been slow as hell here, fishing from the bank. I've been throwing the trap, the red trap, some spinner baits. I tried slowing down with the jig, but man, it's just been horribly slow. So what have you been catching them on? What's it been like out there?
I tell you, man, it's kind of been a lot of the same deal.
Sorry, for anybody that doesn't know.
Oh, yeah. So everybody that doesn't know, I'm East Tennessee based. I live near Knoxville. And so I'm within driving distance of just a lot of phenomenal lakes. You know what I mean? I'm 20 minutes from Loudon, 10 minutes from Norris, an hour and a half from Chickamauga, so I can go down there to the big bass factory at Chickamauga. And that's where I went yesterday. And it's kind of been the same deal here, man. It's been really, really just slow. But our biggest problem has been a lot of rain. We're getting a lot of rain. And so with a lot of rain, what they do is they jerk our lakes up and down because all of our lakes are controlled by dams. And so they'll pull the water level in the lake down to do two things, to avoid flooding and then to generate power. Because with each one of these rainstorms comes a cold front behind it. And so everybody bumps their heat up for a couple of days and then it gets warm and they bump their air conditioner on. And so you got to have that excess power as well as just control those flood levels, right? And so I would get on a bite and they would jerk the water off of what my fish were on. I actually did that the other day, went out, found a bunch on a square bill and had the bite figured out and thought I'm going to come back and just duplicate this bite. And because for the most part, if that water's coming up and as warm as it was, those fish are just going to keep loading on that same stuff, especially on the lake I was on. Well, I get back to the lake, they had dropped it 3 feet. So that bite was gone. But then went to Chick yesterday, again, post front, lot of rain. And man, we literally junk fished all day long. We caught them on everything. Started out the day on a lipless, switched to a square bill, caught a couple decent fish on a jig. And then at the end of the day, we found them stacked up on a little current seam with a Ned rig and just smashed their face in at the end of the day with the Ned rig. So it's just everything right now, man. That's actually what I'm going to talk about in my video tomorrow. It's going to be obviously the fishing footage in my day and the trip. But then at the end, I kind of break down just how this time of year you have to be so diverse. You have to be willing to pick up 6 different things to get 6 different bites. And me, I love to crank. So I want to lock a square bill in my hand and just go square bill fishing. But I know this time of year, just when they get in that kind of weird, transitional time, that you got to be really diverse in what you do to get bites. So.
Yeah. And I know it's going to pick up here. Like I was telling Alex, the water temps here is still in the mid 40s. So it's still cold. We just had ice out a few weeks ago. I saw somebody in the comments, I don't know where you were. They said, hey, I'm in Iowa and I caught 13 today. Rich 17. Well, let me know where you're at. I'll go fish that tomorrow. Let me know exactly what you caught them on. And I'll give you a shout out in the video, right? I mean, that's a win-win situation for everyone.
Absolutely.
Hasn't been that way around here, but good for you, man. Hopefully everybody else is catching them. I'll figure them out one of these days. I did see a Rudd question here. I don't know where it went. We'll get back to it. But okay, so a little bit of everything. And I like that you did talk about that because, for a lot of new people, and I get in that mindset too of you go out with a plan, you go out with what you think they're going to be biting or what you want them to bite, right? I love fishing that square bill, or I love fishing a finesse jig, whatever, and they don't bite. Like you said, you've got to be able to change up, right? You've got to be able to switch on the fly. I've had awesome days doing that, and I've also destroyed myself on days where I won't give up a frog, or I won't give up a jig.
Yeah, dude, man. And it's one of those things, I had to work on it, for a long time. I was very one track minded. I would have an idea in my head of this is what I wanted to do. And I wouldn't break from that. And, and you would put fish into the boat, especially certain times of year when they bite. But then as I started to grow as an angler and kind of figure out new techniques and experiment with new things, you start to go, oh, okay. Instead of just having one rod on the boat, let's have 3 and be willing to pick up all 3 and know how to do all 3. And then we put more fish into the boat, and that was something that's so funny. I've been fishing my entire life, since I was tiny, before I even knew what fishing was. But it's you still, even though you have those experiences on the water, you get so used to certain things that you just want to do that thing. And I've had to teach myself how to be more diverse and open up a little bit because that's what makes you good. If you can take things, I've learned things from Ben. I've learned things from Caleb. I've learned things from Mikey. I've learned things from all these different people that I've fished around. And I can take those things and then apply them in different situations where I see similar conditions and have success. And, we kind of talked about that last night as well, Mikey. I was talking about the elite series, the pro fishing guys were on Pickwick. And I said, it was amazing to me that a Canadian guy can come to a Tennessee river system lake and get on a jig bite. And Mikey was like, it is, but all at the same time, he knows how to fish a jig on a dock. So he went to his confidence and adjusted it to where he was at. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And it's cool. You know what I mean? That's part of like being good at fishing. You can be okay, and then there's being good. And I think being good is when you learn to take pieces from everything you've learned and apply it to where you're at. So.
For sure. Yep. Be able to locate those fish. How do you get that bite? How do you confidently locate those fish and get that bite? Yep.
Exactly, dude.
Yeah, I'm definitely on more of the side of okay at fishing, but I still love it.
Hey, that's all right. Dude, I'm just okay. Trust me. Like, I'm horrible compared to some of these guys that I fish with. Like, it's just
dude. There's some guys out there that are just ridiculous. Don't matter what sort of water you put them in, they can catch fish.
Yeah. That's Caleb Bale, man. Caleb, my buddy Basquez, Caleb. He is he's natural, dude. He's just natural. I mean, like, you can put him anywhere, and he's just fishes, and it's like, I don't know what it is. I mean, there's several things that I've learned from him, definitely. But I think one of his big ones is just persistence and patience. Like, he will, if he thinks that there's a fish sitting on something, he'll spend 10 more minutes on it than I would. Mm-hmm. And he'll usually get that bite that I would pass up because I'm wanting to just keep on going. You know what I mean? So
that's a hard part for people, because you see that a lot, right? You see these pro guys in MLF or, whatever. Yeah. And they're talking about covering water, right? And you'll see them with their trolling motor on high, just booking, casting. Yeah. Versus some guys who just want to sit on a spot, and I think that's part of it. How do you get that? Like you were saying with Bass Quest, how do you get there? Is it experience and time on the water, and getting comfortable with a spot? What do you think? Like,
I think that's the biggest factor. I think it's just time on the water, right? I'm the most confident summer fishing because I'm a teacher and I have the summers off. And so I get to spend most of my time during the summer on the water, where most guys, they got to work, May, June, July. I get to be on the water 4 or 5 days a week. And so I can confidently go, okay, they're going to be here, and there. We're going to be able to do this, this, and this, and I'll follow a bite. You know what I mean? And so I always say, I think there are some natural anglers. They have a natural skill set, and they're just good, and they can be good anywhere. But then I think what backs up that natural skill set more than anything is just time on the water in a bunch of different situations. You know what I mean?
I agree.
And like I've learned so much traveling and fishing, like going to southern Alabama and fishing, near the ocean, and like freshwater ponds near the ocean, and kayak fishing down there, and then going all the way up north where Ben's at in northern Michigan and fishing 45 to 50 foot deep. You can see the bottom in 50 foot, like clear water. And it's like all those experiences coupled with everything I got here is like gave me a skill set that I can go, oh, I've seen this before, and pull it out of the toolbox. You know what I mean? And I think those, like the MLF guys, especially, because they're now the guys you see that are like 1,000 miles an hour as hard as they can go to try to catch fish, right? I think what that is more than anything is they're trying to, kind of like a fighter. We were talking about the fight earlier. Mm-hmm. You want to overwhelm the other guy, just overwhelm him with whatever it is. You know what I mean? Whether it's your size or the punches or the kicks. I think those dudes are treating these tournaments a lot like a fight, that in the first 30 minutes, they want to overwhelm everybody else to try to get them to spin out. And that's like the competition side of that fishing deal. I don't even think that they're obviously not trying to look for the biggest five anymore. They don't have to. And there's situations that I know that it's what me and Caleb did yesterday, just to get the skunk out of the boat. We knew the spot that we could run to put 5 in the boat really quick, just to kind of get that confidence rolling. And then we would go slow down and drag the jig and do the stuff to look for the bigger ones. And so those guys are doing the same thing. They'll go find a few stacked up so they can go whop, 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 get them in the boat and try to get everybody else the wheels spinning. You know what I mean? So
try to get them spun out and get them off their game plan, even though they know what they should be doing. You start second guessing yourself, and then it's like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face, and then it's
exactly,
that's
dude. Exactly
true. Yeah. Jonathan Thompson dropped a donation, said 10-minute break, have to watch later. Well, Jonathan, thanks for jumping in anyway. We appreciate you and the donation, sir. Anybody who donates, I never ask you guys to, but I always appreciate everyone who does. I did see Jim Tackle Junkie was in here, and it was his birthday, the big 4-0. Happy birthday, brother.
Heck yeah, dude. Getting old on us, son. Getting old on us.
I'm going to be there in a couple years. Old Gray Bush Debo.
I like it. I got some gray going on right here, and it's starting to I can't let my hair grow anymore because I look like the silver stallion on the side of my head.
Yeah, that's where mine started. Luckily, I don't really have much, but I've noticed it's bothered me because I've got a couple pecking in here in the beard, and I'm like, oh man, the beard was supposed to not get gray on me. The hell?
Yeah, right. I just hope if it goes, it all goes gray, like at the same time for me. Like I don't want patchy. I just want Santa Claus. You know what I mean?
And as long as I keep the hair, right? I'm okay if it goes gray as long as I keep it all. It doesn't just like start falling out and I have like a little bit here, a little bit here, a little puff there. Yeah. That'd be rough.
That's funny. That's funny.
So when we're talking about, newer folks getting into bass fishing and looking at spring fishing and such, I know both of us have done spring fishing videos. I know that's one that helps a ton of people out. I get a bunch of requests for it. I know you do. So let's say somebody a little bit newer to fishing or somebody maybe that's struggling right now. What would you advise them, or what kind of tips would you give them to get into some spring fishing, some combos and lures? And look at this. Look at this. There he is.
Man.
Mr. Nowak. You're on mute, Ben.
Yep.
What's up?
There he is.
Hey.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going awesome now that you're here.
Yeah, finally. Yeah. Thanks for showing up.
Hey, man. Fashionably late, dude.
That's all right. Better late than never.
How are you guys?
Good.
I've been listening for a couple minutes, so
okay.
So I kind of know what's going on, but
yeah. I'll let Rod answer this one, then Ben, I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll keep going on questions and have fun.
Yeah, so spring fishing, man, I think the first thing that people got to realize about spring fishing is right now is the best time of the year to go catch the biggest bass that you'll ever catch. And it's just because you got a bunch of really big females that will come up and move up shallow that won't ever do that the rest of the year. And the reason they do that is because it's baby making time. They have to come shallow to make beds and to make nests to lay eggs in order to make other little baby bass. And so, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that like this time of year when you're starting to get into spring fishing, like, hey, this is going to be your opportunity to really see the most fish, have an opportunity to see big fish, and have an opportunity to catch a lot of big fish and to catch a lot of fish, period. And so that being said, don't get discouraged once we start going into summer and fall and winter that you're like, man, I suck because I didn't catch as many fish as I did in April and May. Well, it's just for the simple fact that those fish aren't there anymore. You're going to have to start doing different techniques, different things, fishing in different areas, fishing different parts of the pond, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And so that's my first big tip is like realize that this time of year is special because you got a lot of fish moving up wanting to make babies. And don't get discouraged when we go into another time of year. As far as baits and stuff, this early pre-spawn time. And when I say the word pre-spawn, what I mean is the period before the females and the males actually make the nest to have the babies. There's going to be a period of time when they're feeding and they're getting ready for that moment. And because once they decide to make that bed, they're going to stay, the male anyway is going to stay on that bed for a prolonged period of time. And then the female is going to be there for a certain amount of time and then she'll leave. But they know that they're going to have to go hang out on those beds and they're going to have to make babies. And that's going to take a lot of energy. And so pre-spawn, man, they get jacked and they will eat every single thing that moves within a lake. And so what's awesome about spring is that you can throw moving baits like square bills and bladed jigs and spinner baits and jerk baits and do all that kind of stuff that a lot of guys like to do, move and groove and do all that kind of stuff. But then you can also have some awesome opportunities like I did yesterday, throwing the more finesse stuff like your Ned rigs and your jigs and your Texas rigs. So, another big piece of advice for me would be like, look at where you're fishing, figure out what the bass are eating or what the primary forage is in your lake. And a lot of people say, well, Alex, how do I do that? And I often say, man, just use your eyes. Your eyes are your biggest tool. Just start looking. Do you see bait fish? How big are the bait fish? Do you see bluegill? How big are the bluegills? Are there crawdads crawling around in the rocks? What kind of crawdads? How big are they? Blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And that'll really kind of help you to key in on what you need to be throwing to put more fish in the boat, the bank, kayak, wherever you guys happen to be fishing. So that's kind of my big keys for spring fishing.
I like it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's something that I struggle with too, is like when you change seasons or change, like you were saying, you had a bite figured out, and then they dropped water levels. And I know a lot of people kind of struggle with that as, or even if you go out with a buddy or hear about a buddy going out, a week ago, we destroyed him on this. Then you try going out and trying to replicate that, a week later, it could be a completely different spot, whether they've moved off beds, whether they're moving up 2 beds, whether they've moved from spring to summer, So just because it worked once, don't get discouraged if you go out, a couple weeks later and it doesn't work again. You kind of have to mix it up and refigure it out. Sometimes it can be almost like a new spot.
Exactly. And, and like for me, like I figured out the fish that were on that lake, right? I kind of figured out what they wanted to do by simply understanding the fact that, this time of year specifically with fish that are wanting to spawn, when the water drops, they still want to be shallow. So all they'll do is, instead of being on what I found them on, they'll just pull off to the next closest thing, like the next bush or the next log or the next rock. And it's like this time of year, man, fish are very, very target oriented, meaning that they want to be on something like a rock or a boulder or a tree or a laydown or a crappie sticks. And it's just because they use those things to ambush, and then eventually they'll use that piece of hard cover to spawn on as well, because they like to have something to kind of put their back up against, and then they'll make a bed on it. And Ben, when I'm up north with him, we'll do the clear water bed fish and stuff with smallmouth. Dude, if you find boulders, you'll find smallmouth, because it's the only thing in that vast expanse of the Great Lakes that those fish can get on. Where, like for you, Debo, and for me, and even for Ben when he does inland lake stuff, there's so many targets that they can get on. And it's just our job of figuring out what target do they want to be on any given day or any given week or even time of day. I mean, dude, I've seen it within a day where they go from don't want to spawn to, by the end of the day at 4 o'clock, they're all trying to fan beds and make beds, and they've completely switched within just the time period of 8 hours. You know what I mean? So
all good info. There's all sorts of knowledge bombs being dropped. Hopefully y'all are going to get your money's worth tonight. I'm trying to soak up this. I hope y'all are. So Ben, since you're here, can you give us a quick overview of Ben Nowak Fishing? What are you about? What's your deal for anybody on my channel that doesn't know you? And make sure you're following these guys, Alex Rudd, Ben Nowak. After the broadcast goes published or whatever, I'll link them down below. I'm bad at doing that stuff before, but I will do that. Make sure you follow these guys. Ben, go ahead.
Thanks, man. Yeah, a little bit about me. I'm from Michigan, so I fish the Great Lakes a lot, and as Alex alluded to, it's a lot of clear water, but I actually just went out on largemouth fish today, and that's what I'm going to be doing a lot more of this year. So it's still going to be a bunch of smallmouth stuff. It used to be very smallmouth focused, and then, just a lot of Michigan northern style fishing. What's cool about up here, you can fish everything from a heavy flipping weight to a 6-pound test fluorocarbon line with a 1/32 ounce hair jig and go out and catch them. So, I mean, there's so many different ways you can catch them, and that's kind of what I like to do, just kind of the variety of it.
Yeah, and I didn't really know that until I started getting into YouTube, because I just kind of took a lot of that for granted. But I was the same way. We have, I'll talk to guys that are like, no, man, all I fish is deep water reservoirs. That's all I've got by me. Or, no, my lakes are all mud. Like I've never seen clear water within, a 5-hour drive. I was kind of the same way. We've got really grassy lakes. We've got some super clear, impoundments, that were just big, huge trenches dug out when they were doing, building and stuff. And it turns into a, 100-acre lake or whatever.
Yeah.
So we kind of have a bunch, and that's, I know what you mean. That's fun, to be able to kind of do a lot of that. Before you jumped on, Alex was kind of talking about that. Just adds to your arsenal, right? The more scenarios you can get in, and the more different types of places you can fish, the better equipped you're going to be, going into the future as far as fishing other places, because it's going to be something kind of similar, right? Even if it doesn't match exactly. He was just talking about the Canadian guy, I forget his name, coming down and catching him on a jig. He's good at fishing a jig around docks. Then he adapts that to a different water, what you're comfortable with. So I think that's something that, a lot of the newer folks have to realize too, is it's not always going to be the same, but a lot of times you can change up a couple things and catch them.
Yeah, for sure. And it's just about being versatile and understanding like where your strength lies, regardless of where you're fishing, right? And so kind of dabbling with a bunch of different stuff and finding out, okay, man, I really like to flip a jig shallow, and like I think I'm pretty good at it. Well, now I can take that down to Tennessee, I can take it to Iowa, I can take it to Florida, because that's something that I have confidence in and I sort of understand. And you'll have to adjust it a little bit, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's still one of those techniques, and you could apply that for anything, like cranking, like Mikey, man. Mikey Balls, for the people that don't know, he cranks deep water down in Florida, and now he brought it up to Alabama and is still kind of applying some of those same principles in Alabama. And he did it up here when he came up to Michigan. And so just having the time on the water and understanding a bunch of different techniques is great to be able to go out and essentially have these things in your arsenal. That way you can be a more versatile angler and catch more fish.
Agreed. Now, what are you catch? You said you went out and did some largemouth fishing today. Did you fare well? What are you catching them on them? What's it kind of like up there?
Yeah, we caught them pretty good. And we were flipping
hold
jigs.
on, stop.
Damn.
Out.
I must be. I feel like the third wheel here. Y'all are like, oh, I caught 30. Ben's like, we caught him pretty well. I caught today.
When Ben does this number, did you catch him? Yeah, we caught him pretty well. And he gets that shit-eating grin on his face. That means he cracked him.
Yeah.
Right, so how bad was it today? How bad you cracked their face in?
Okay, so it wasn't like stupid, but we probably caught 10 to 15 fish. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty stupid. We probably caught like 10 to 15 fish, and none of them were less than like 3.5 pounds. Like I flipped in, and I was dragging it out from this little laydown sort of thing, and there's a bunch of reeds like kind of matted up. Well, it goes through those reeds. I'm bringing it over this little laydown, and all of a sudden it goes dunk and swims to the side. And I set the hook, and it's my first one of the day. Well, I boat flip this thing, and it's got like a big head, like a really big head. And my buddy goes, dude, that's a 5. That's a 5.5. But it just had this big head in this little body. It had like a head of a 5.5 and like a body of like a 3-pounder.
Yeah.
So it went 4.5, but we probably caught 23, 24 pounds.
Lord of mercy, son.
It was so dumb. It was so dumb.
God. Well,
that's Michigan fishing.
Yeah,
it really is, though.
We're 27 minutes in, guys, and I actually want to end this broadcast and take up a different, whole other career and hobby. I can't
Dude,
get on it.
hey, listen, I feel that, okay? Like, I don't always, like, I have periods of time which I get on them. Ben is on them, all right? Like, he stays on them and cracks them. And he goes, he does all this,
so
like,
different.
It is, dude. It's crazy.
Michigan is different than like these other places. Like it is phenomenal, and you can move and go do whatever you want. Like you can largemouth fish on the Great Lakes. You can go smallmouth fish. You can largemouth fish half a day and catch 20 pounds, and then go smallmouth fish on the Great Lakes and catch 20 pounds. Same day.
Mm-hmm.
Like inland, same thing. It's one of those deals where you have so many different opportunities, and everything is so fertile. Whether it's from farm runoff or it's from whatever it is, like our lakes are really, really fertile. They're really good. There's healthy populations of fish. And I just think it's like these northern fisheries. You get that ice cap, and these fish just have the ability to kind of grow and grow and grow with good management. And so, and great giant bodies of water.
Yeah. So crazy. And did you say you were flipping a jig? Is that kind of what you guys caught them on today, or?
Yeah. I caught one on a jerkbait, kind of just messing around, but most of them were on a 1/2 ounce jig, living rubber skirt, 7.3 heavy rod with, I think it was 17 or 20 pound fluorocarbon. And the big thing was just these fish, what they do is they'll come out from the deep water and they'll start to kind of push up and just look for the warmest water possible. And we're talking Great Lakes. So like on the main lake, it's 37 degrees. But when you get up in these ditches, after you have these warm, like rains, all the ditches with the culverts with the runoff in them will warm up to like 46, 47 degrees. And you can go and find, and this was really eye-opening. I've never done this until today. But they all have these runoff and these drainage ditches in the back of them, and it pumps out warm water. And so all these fish move in from the Great Lakes. They sit in that warmer water discharge, and you can go up in there and catch them. And these fish are just starting to move in. Like if you go in there in a week, 2 weeks, you get some rain, you get some warm weather. Like Alex knows, Alex has been here.
Dude,
we're not talking like marina fishing, but these are, I don't know, maybe 150, 200 yards long. And you just drive your boat up in there and you go fishing. And it's, okay, well, there's a piece of wood in the water and you go flip into it. There's one. It's stupid.
Man.
Yep.
It's crazy.
So, as far as like bank fishing, I don't, I do a lot of bank fishing.
Yeah.
When you apply a lot of this to, a lot of the same things can happen. Do you have any tips for like bank fishing guys? Because like water temps are like mid-40s here for me, and I'm struggling, and I know I've talked to a couple other people that are. What would you say those sort of people look for, if you're on a smaller lake or a larger pond or whatever? I know you said like warm water, right? Warmer water is a big deal. What else? Do you have any other tips?
So the biggest thing for us is like this time of year when the water's still really, really cold, you are looking for literally the warmest areas of water possible. So what that could be is like if you're fishing a farm pond, but you have a drainage ditch with a culvert that runs in, where like all the rain flows into the drainage ditch and then the drain basically drains into the lake, that water is going to be a lot warmer. So those drainage ditches are really, really good. Culverts are going to be really, really good. And let's say it's just a pond, right? Like let's say there's no water flowing in. It's literally a stagnant pond. You're going to look for the area where the wind is blowing the water into, like the windy side, because a lot of times what's going to happen is it's going to blow that top surface water over to that side of the lake or pond, and that's where you're going to notice like the warmest water, concentration of warm water. And that's one of the things we did today too. We were in like these dead end cutbacks, and it would always be the windy side because it always was like 2 degrees warmer than the rest. And these fish, literally, it could be half a degree. It could be a degree. It could be 2 degrees. But these fish will get on that warmer water stuff super, super early. And my eyes are just being open to it more and more. Like the more I go out and do this stuff, how finicky these fish can be. And you'll get like no bites. And you just keep fishing along. And you find like that warmer water. Or you find a drainage ditch with water coming in. Or you find, here's a huge one for anyone that's fishing from the shore. Wood retains heat better than any surface out there because it's so porous, and it heats up relatively quickly because it's typically darker colored. So if you have wood or laydowns or trees that hang over into the water, those are going to warm up faster. They're going to have a natural ecosystem around them, and they're going to hold heat more. So it's a great place to target these fish from or at, because like it's just a natural ecosystem for these fish.
And just to add on to that, don't be scared of dirty water. Like what you got to realize is dirty water heats up faster than clean water does. And so this time of year, a lot of people, I go against that idea of like, I want to go find the cleaner water. No, I want to go find the dirty water. All the water I fished yesterday was muddy, and the water I've been looking for is muddy and shallow. Because if you have water that's 1.5 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot deep, and it's chocolate milk and the sun's been shining on it all day, that'll warm up. So like if you're in a situation where you don't have warm water flowing in, kind of like what Ben said, like in a farm pond or just a pond that has no inflow, you find that shallower, dirtier side of the pond, I can promise you there's going to be fish that have moved up in there to simply sit there in sun and try to warm their body up. Because a fish is, bass specifically, and all fish, they're like reptiles. They got to warm up for their body to function correctly. And so they'll go sit in this sun. And if you buzz a trap by them, or you buzz a square bill by them, or you drag a jig by them, you can get them to react, or you get them to eat that. That's a fish into the bank. You know what I mean? Or a fish into the kayak or whatever you happen to be fishing out of. And so like this is, keep all those kind of different factors in mind. You got to realize that there's things in bodies of water that'll attract fish, not just because they're there and it's something for the fish to sit on, but because it attracts bait fish, or it warms up, or it's blah, 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 whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, just don't get frustrated, man. Like it is so early in the year.
Yeah.
For you guys in Iowa and for us in Michigan, like it is so early in the year where this water's so cold, like you can't get frustrated because these first month of going out suck and you only catch one or two, you don't catch any. There's going to be a time where things are going to start to click for you and for the fish, and things are going to start to flow, and you're going to end up having a really good day on the water. So you can't just give up because a couple days suck.
Yeah. Oh, I won't give up. See, I'm not handsome enough to do anything. Like I can't do any modeling. I'm already older, so I'm past my prime of fighting. So it's like I just fall back on the fishing again. So I tempt fate with it, but I'm not going to. And you're completely right. You know, like people talk about the north side of the lake or pond, you know, warming up faster. And as that wind blows in, I was literally just looking at pictures. And if I've told you guys before, I'm sure you guys are big advocates of it. You know, being YouTube guys, we don't really think about it because we have to do this stuff. You know, we're trying to get, you know, Instagram pictures and YouTube videos and all this, you know, crap. But I was literally just going back and looking at pictures today to try and see, okay, what was stuff like last year? And by this time last year, I hadn't even caught a fish. Actually, it might have been just today that I caught my first fish. It was right at the end of March. And last year was warmer. Whereas this year, I've already been out. I was out on a pond that was still half frozen. We had like a third of the pond to fish, and I caught a fish, you know? So looking at last year, the bite didn't pick up for me until like the first week, second week of April, it started clicking, right? We started destroying them on the lipless bite. We always get on a good lipless bite around here. You know, last a couple weeks when they start moving up. So yeah, Ben, you're completely right. Don't give up. Keep grinding. You know, don't be one of those fair weather fishermen that only go out when it, you know, when it seems great. Catching fish on those days that are awful, you know, high bluebird sky, you shouldn't get a bite, and you figure something out. Like that's just another tool in the toolbox to keep back there. Of there's no such thing as a bad day, right? You know, it's always an opportunity.
Everything is a learning experience.
Yes.
Like
yes.
I can't tell you how many times I've gone out and just, you know, just got my teeth kicked in by the lake. But I'll take that opportunity to go, okay, what did I do wrong? How can I adjust? Or let me go put this bait in my hand and let me go throw it and really get a sense for it. Even though I'm not catching fish, I may catch a fish throwing it. Or like, let me go, like how I learned how to skip docks. I put a jig in my hand and I went and skipped docks. Even though I wasn't catching them skipping docks, I just went and skipped docks. You know what I mean? And I turned a sucky day where I wasn't catching any fish into an opportunity to hone a skill that I wasn't good at.
Yes.
And like that dude, big swimbait fishing. You know, people ask me all the time about big swimbait fishing. Let me tell you something. You want to know how you get good at big swimbait fishing? You go out and do what I did. Not catch fish about the first 55 times you go out there and throw it. And then once you get just the motion of throwing the bait, working the bait, doing everything, the operationals around the bait, it's like there's a switch gets hit and then you start catching fish on it. And then it all starts to mesh together. The hours of just throwing it and learning it combined with the actually how to catch fish on it. And then you start catching fish on them. So,
Yep. Let's see. I'm going to go through and start. And if you guys have anything, if you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about, jump in. Let's have fun. Let's talk. I saw a couple of things coming in. I saw Phantom Fishing is in here. Phantom, thanks for jumping in. He said all of our water is dirty. Yeah, I know you and Jim over there basically only fish chocolate milk. What else do we have? I'm ready for some Iowa topwater. Dominic says, yeah, dude, I am like having frogging withdrawals. I see people already. It literally makes me want to throw up. Two things. One, it makes me want to throw up because it makes me sick to my stomach. Two, I want to find out where these people live and go punch them in the face because they're literally catching frogfish in March. How?
Texas, man. Texas and down south, I bet. Yeah.
Good Lord.
I'll tell you this much, though. Caleb caught the first topwater fish of the year yesterday. Like, we found them schooled. I got him fired on a lipless, and he fired a topwater, a devil horse out there, and was just dragging it real slow. And one just come up and kissed it and took it back down. But yeah, man, I put the frog rod. Oh, dude, he was jazzed. I mean, it was like a pound and a halfer, and he was jazzed. You know what I mean? But now I put the frog rod back in the boat. Like I'm forcing it. Like it's nowhere near even being time for it. But I put the frog rod in the boat just so that it would be in there just to satisfy my itch because I'm like you, Debo. Like February, I start buying frogs that I don't even need to try to scratch the itch. And then by March, I've got the frog rod in the boat. And by the first week of April, I'm throwing a frog just for giggles and shits, just to throw it. So
just because you feel comfortable with it, I'm like, listen, even if I don't catch anything, I love just throwing this frog and working it. There's something therapeutic about it. Kind of like buying tackle in the winter here in Iowa. You can't go out and fish unless you're fishing through a little 8-inch hole in a hut. So it's like I'm buying tackle to try and crave my urge, but it doesn't work.
It don't work until that first one just goes and grabs that thing and you so
if only. Let's see. We got some people asking questions. Fish some spots by you, Rudd. I don't know. These are maybe some places you know. Hey, Rudd, have you fished the little Marrowbone Lake? It is in between Nashville and Clarksville. I live in Tennessee and got skunked every 4 times I've fished this year and lost $30 of lures.
I'll tell you, man, I'll be honest. I'm never taking the time to go out to Middle Tennessee and fish the Middle Tennessee, like, bunch of lakes. Clark's or Bales, Clark's Hill and Dell Hollow and all the Percy Priest. I've never fished any of those lakes. I need to. I just always head south. Like, it's an hour and 45 minutes to there, just like it's an hour and 45 minutes to Chickamauga. But if I'm going to drive an hour and 45 minutes, I'm going to Chickamauga. You know what I mean? But I need to go out there and just fish some of the Middle Tennessee lakes. But I've heard they're tough. I mean, everybody I talk to across the board says they're tough lakes, but there's better quality and bigger class of fish that lives in the lakes if you can get them to bite. So just, I wish I could help you more, but I've never been there, so I don't have any experience on kind of, if you can tell me how it sets up, I might be able to help you, but I've never been there personally and done it. So
here's a good one. Okay, so I was actually, this cracked me up because I was listening to Burley's podcast. I like listening to podcasts. I was never big into podcasts until I've been driving and fishing places. But I was listening to Burley. Paul's improved clinch knot, formerly Sports Freak 76. I think this is a kick at poor Paul because he still likes to use the improved clinch knot. Asks, does a full moon affect how you fish, techniques, baits, etc.? So you guys take it away. You guys are a wealth of knowledge. I'm going to pick you for everything I can tonight. I've heard, it kind of goes both ways. Full moon around spawn is ridiculously good. Other times full moon can be kind of rough because those fish are feeding, throughout the full moon. The 3 days leading up to it and after it are amazing. What are your guys' takes? What do you look for in full moon phase, and how does it affect your fishing?
Ben, you go first, buddy.
So, I mean, outside of the spawn, I think the spawn typically what happens is these fish take the opportunity and it kind of drives these fish to get on the beds. It's basically the longest light period day, or those are the longest light period days, right? Even when it's at night, there's still a moon overhead, a big full moon overhead, and these fish can kind of roam the flats and get up on beds. Mm-hmm. But outside of the spawn, for me, I'm typically going to start the day shallower than I normally would. It's going to illuminate that shallow water, and it's going to drive these fish into the shallows where they can feed basically all throughout the night, as opposed to like a new moon and basically all the other moon phases. I'm typically just going to kind of treat it like a normal day, but full moon, I'll start shallower in the morning and just kind of go from there. But I think moon phase plays a big factor on how well fish bite, but I don't know the exact sciences behind it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with a lot of what Ben said. Obviously around the spawn, me and Ben have seen it. We've experienced what a full moon can do to spawning fish. We've tried to force a spawning bite and a bed fishing bite, and then the full moon finally rolls through, and it's like they just go. It's like that's what they were waiting for. You know what I mean? And a lot of that has to do with bass. In every living creature on Earth is driven by the photic periods, and what that means is how much sunlight they get drives behavioral decisions. If anybody's into deer hunting, you guys know that full moons and length of day and certain things will determine the rut and how deer act and those kinds of things, right? And so full moons can drive an entire bass's, just want to make babies. And so that's that kind of thing. Now, as far as feeding around the full moon, I have noticed outside of this time of year, for the most part, it doesn't really affect them, because when they decide it's time to eat, they just eat and eat and eat and eat, and they try to eat everything that moves. You know what I mean? And they're just getting ready to do their thing, and so they want to eat. But like as we get on into summer and fall and like winter, man, full moon days for me are some of the toughest days fishing, because usually if we have a full moon and it's visible all night, that means that we're probably post front, we've had zero weather and we have high skies. And so that's going to make it tough. But then also they've got all night to feed. My fish are very nocturnal and they love to feed on a moon. And so, you know, it's going to be one of those things that I kind of in my head, and obviously we talked about it earlier, don't go in with a super set plan and only stick to it. But in my head, I'm already kind of gearing up I'm going to have to drag the Ned rig. I'm going to have to fish the jig. I'm going to have to fish the shaky head, something, because I'm dealing with a bunch of fish. It's be like any of us, you know, like if you sit up all night long and ate hamburgers and then you slept for 2 hours and you get up and your wife's cooked this huge breakfast, you're not really going to want the huge breakfast because you're still full off your hamburgers. Well, the bass are the same way. They get fat and happy, and when the sun comes up, they just go sit in the sun and chill and relax because they're full and they have no need or drive to go try to kill anything. So,
Yep.
And it drives something in basically living creatures. The full moon is insane. Like my wife is a night nurse. She works evenings.
Oh, the full moon.
Oh my gosh. The full moon like drives humans crazy too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys struggle to sleep. I don't know if you guys struggle to sleep on full moon nights, but like something changes.
Yeah, my kids at school, man, we know it's a full moon because they start acting a fool when the full moon comes out. It's the weirdest thing.
It's weird.
Crazies. All the crazies come out on the full moon. Watch out. That's what we always say around here. My wife works at the hospital too. So yeah, watch out for the crazies.
Oh,
yeah.
The one time I worked at a hospital for 7 years, the one time I had fecal matter thrown at me was on a full moon.
Oh.
Alex now took off every full moon for the rest of his career.
Oh.
Yep, that's right. I would watch the moon phase.
Let's see. Here we go. I had a fun one. Where was it? Here. Debo, Ben, Alex, if you had one lure to throw tomorrow, what would it be? Just one. So I know we kind of talked about this a little bit, Alex, before. For me, gosh, and it goes to, do I think I'm going to catch a fish on it, or do I really want to throw it? I just want to start catching fish on a spinnerbait. Next to frog fishing, I could throw a spinnerbait all day. So I pushed the envelope today. I did catch a couple on a big old red Colorado blade spinnerbait and some muddy water, but I only managed 2. 1.5 pounder was the biggest, but spinnerbait just because
awesome,
I love it.
Yeah. Love a good spinnerbait bite. Mine, this is probably going to be pretty obvious for anybody that watches my channel, a square bill. Square bill is my tool of bass destruction this time of year, man. I mean, it's what I lock in my hand and go to work on. And so, you know, depending on the water clarity is going to kind of depend on the color I choose, but some either, you know, bright crazy crawl pattern or some more natural crawl pattern or even a shad chartreuse pattern, man, and just go out there and polish every rock within 2 to 5 foot of water. And that's kind of my game plan.
And how big do you go on like the red lures? Do you buy into a lot of the red stuff? You know, I've heard everything from the way bass see, you know, they can see red in a different spectrum than us. It mimics red crawfish, which here in Iowa, we don't have red crawfish, but you still get bites on it. All kinds of stuff. What's your deal on? I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but I'm not going to forget you.
You're good.
Lure, but...
Oh, you're fine.
You're good. No, what's funny is I've had this conversation. It'll be the 3rd time that I've talked about this in like 4 days.
God, I'm sorry, man.
It's great.
This is a great conversation. This is a great conversation.
How do you remember something?
Say it over and over and over again.
Repetition, right? Hey, we're just burning this in the minds of people.
Yeah.
Dude,
so
I'll tell you what though, when you said that red spinnerbait, all I could think of was like, this is the time.
Yeah.
This is the time.
Early spring. Yep. Red spinnerbait.
So I have a philosophy behind this, and this is a philosophy that has been backed up by conversations that I've had with people a lot smarter than I am, and more specifically, a fisheries biologist that I had on my podcast a few months ago. And I asked him this question directly. So I got to doing some research. Because I love to research things. You know, when I have a question, I will dive into Google and pull out books and read articles. And like, I'm the guy who goes to the university part of Google and will look up like university studies on things, right?
Yes.
I'm weird like that.
I love it. Nerding out.
Yeah, I nerd out on stuff, man. So I found some studies about saltwater fish specifically. And some deep ocean saltwater fish actually have a muscle behind their eye that they force blood into, and that muscle will warm the blood up before it actually goes to their eye to help them see better in colder water. Because these deep oceanic fish, it doesn't matter where you're at in the ocean, when you're 150, 250, 500 feet down, that water is substantially colder than the surface temperature. And so they have these specially, like adapted muscles in their eye to help them to see in the colder and darker water. And so I got to thinking, well, a bass has to be similar, right? And we kind of talked about it a few minutes ago. A bass is a cold-blooded creature. They have to have the sun to warm their body up for it to function properly. And so I posed the question to the fisheries biologist. I said, hey, man, do you think that fish see certain colors better in colder water because their eyes don't function as well because they're cold? And his answer was, I've never dove into that question myself, but that would make perfect sense because, fish don't function as well when they're cold. And so my assumption is red works in the spring for a myriad of reasons. I heard it said that red only works because everybody throws red. You know what I mean? And I would have to disagree with that statement because I think red works, number one, because fish can see it better in colder water. I think that flashy orange, that red, it stands out. Even when a fish is kind of hazy and they're not functioning at 100%, they can still see it. And if they can see it, you can get them to react to it. And a reaction bite from a bass, they can't help but eat it. Like their brain literally is so small and so just simplistic that if they see that flash in front of their eyes, they will lash out at it like unintentionally, right?
Eat that bait, dummy. Yeah, and the thing that I say
seriously.
is like throwing a ball at you. What's your first reaction? Is to try and catch it just out of reaction, right? Same thing for a reaction bite. They're just trying to catch that ball.
Exactly. And their brain literally, they can't help but their body literally can't help but go after it. You know what I mean? I think number two, and like you alluded to, red is one of the first colors in the spectrum of light when you put something into the water that stands out the best. And it has been proven by science that bass see red the best in shallow water. And so obviously you've got a lot of shallow water bass in the spring that are probably living in dirtier, dingier water, and it's cold. And so you're giving them something that stands out in all three of those categories. Again, giving them something. It's perfect storm of reaction, right? And then number three, I think it can do a good job of mimicking certain bait fish, bluegills, crawfish. Some of my crawfish will turn oranges and reds and greens, but it's not like California Delta where they're like, emerald red.
Red.
You know what I mean? Yeah, they're not like that. But I've seen times when bluegills, where like you'll have bluegills that start moving out of deep water up into the shallow water, will literally be pink, orange, and red, just where all their colors, where they've not seen the sun, just like us. When sunlight hits a bass, all their colors start to pop. Just like when we get burnt, we get tan. Bluegills do the same exact thing. And so I've seen times when those bluegills, little small bluegills will be orange, red, pink, and they'll just be like this mirage of weird color. And I think, those exactly.
That's one that I just got. Ready right there.
Yeah.
Orange. And so you can belly, tons of orange. You got a little red on the ear.
Yep. And that's just those colors that those bass start to see. And a bass is a very simplistic animal in the fact that if it's rewarded with a meal when it reacts to a certain color or a certain sound or a certain shape, it will keep reacting to that sound, shape, or color as long as it's rewarded with food.
Survival, right? Yeah, it's
survival. It's
a learned skill, right?
Exactly. And so I think that's why red works. I think that there's a lot more factors that go into why bass eat things than we think they do. I think that there's times you can get them to react to things that they just because it stands out. I think there's times when you can get on unique bites because it's a unique color. But there's always going to be a factor as to why they're doing it. They're still living creatures. They still have brains. They still operate independently from any factor that we can put upon them. We can be the best angler in the world, but if that 5-pounder doesn't want to eat, I can't make it eat. Right. And so there's some reason why it works, and I think that's some of the reason why it works. Now I will get off my soapbox and let Ben talk about his favorite lure.
That was like a side quest. I got my money's worth there.
Yeah. There you go.
Dude, how big was that red ear, by the way? That was a big one.
I think that was 11-inch. That was my biggest one from the last trip I was out.
That's
Heck
crazy.
yeah.
That's a big fish.
It was a chunk.
Yeah.
We both caught me and my old man both caught a couple like that. It was a fun day.
That's crazy. No, for me, it's a jig. I know a lot of people would expect me to pick up something for like a smallmouth. Like, I love fishing a jig though, like a 1/2 ounce flipping style jig that, living rubber skirt, just kind of a bigger, bulkier fish catching machine.
And do you
Ben is a jig man. You a jig man, Ben.
I love to fish a jig. Alex knows it. I mean, I love
He's
fishing.
jig fishing full.
jigs? They say jigs catch the bigs, right?
Jigs catch the bigs, and that's all
true?
I'm about. Like, I just like them
I need
big.
to only throw jigs then because sometimes I lack in the big catching category. I did see somebody. I'm sorry, I don't know why this keeps rolling up. Damn it! But somebody asked, "Do you stop throwing red baits after spring? Do you guys continue to throw a red lipless or a red jig, anything like that after spring goes by? Do you keep throwing them?"
Man, I tell you, I've never had success on a red after the spring and after the spawn, and I really think it's because the lakes start to clear up. The bait fish and the bluegills and the crawdads all start to change color. And Mikey made a really good point last night that I never thought about. He said that if you look at natural things in a natural environment, they're going to change to mimic their environment because they're trying to not get killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so like bait fish are silver and reflective, and they reflect the color of the water. And so like, it was one of those things, like, I was like, damn, I've never thought about it that way. That's why bait fish look brownish and reddish in the water during this time of year, because all they're doing is reflecting the water. I was like, that's crazy. And then the bluegills, they change because they start to get more color on them. And I think it's all part of a natural process, right? Bass, you'll catch a really fresh bass and he'll be dang near white where he's not seeing the sun. But when he gets up in that grass and he gets up on the bank and it starts to get summertime, they start to get a lot of color on them. They change to those crazy, dark and green, and they blend in with their environment. And so I think what starts to happen is there starts to be a change in the later on in the spring into the summer where those bass start focusing on different colors, different forage types, and all those kinds of things. And the reds just kind of start to fade away because those colors that those bass are focusing on start to fade away. But that being said, that's, I'll flip like when I'm flipping, I'll dye the tails and
Dude, I know. I was like, I almost forgot I was on a live. I thought I was watching like a seminar. Damn, Rudd. Well done.
Dude, man, that's the teacher coming out in me, right? Like I get info in my head, and like I can just, once I got it, I'll get it out. But like in the summer, when I flip, I'll put a little bit of orange dye or a little bit of chartreuse dye on the tail of something, depending on if there's something I've seen that makes me think I need to do that. And I got on a really unique bite last year where I found a bunch of those red ears like you were catching. And I'd never really seen them around me. Like we usually have like the shell crackers, right? And we had the red ears, and then we had the little, what's the warmouth or whatever. It's the little black dudes with the really orange belly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those thousands of those little dudes up like under the trees.
Sunfish?
Yeah, like a green sunfish sort of. And like, so there was thousands of those little dudes swimming around the trees. And I guess they were spawning or something. And like, dude, I went from catching just a few fish to catching a bunch when I dyed the one tip of my Cinco in orange. And it's because it did a really good job of mimicking that bright orange patch on their belly. And so, yeah, it'll still play, but I think it's just not going to play as big because you start to see adjustments in the bait fish and in the forage, and everything just changes as you go into the spring. I mean, spring is the rebirth and everything changes. And so fish are no different.
I agree. I was trying to find a picture of one I've caught, man. Like we've got a bunch of green sunfish in the lakes around here. And dude, especially during spawn, like they get vibrant, like a neon green with crazy orange belly. I was going to see if I could find one just to show everyone quick, but that's another thing to keep in mind. Maybe, after bass spawn, you have some of those other, bluegill and stuff moving up to throw something a little bit brighter instead of focusing on that red. Like you said, the water's clear. Now you've got green sunfish and bluegill up on beds. Of course, those bass are kind of get their revenge and feast on them, going with a brighter color. Maybe you could still catch them on red, like you said, but
Yeah.
Same for crappie. Like here's a white crappie I caught, and like they get crazy. I don't know if it's going to show up much. It's hard to tell, but like a neon green with like bright yellow, you know, and when you first catch them, you know, at the beginning of the year, they're super dull, you know, from being out there deep, they're just, you know, really poopy, boring colors.
Here's a great example of, so there's a perch that I caught on a crankbait. And I think that's another thing, like, you know, just look at that thing. You know, he's got all those crazy bright colors on. Well, that fish was caught, let's see, that was November 17th. Yeah, dude, they get big down here.
Damn.
But that was caught November 17th. And so those perch, they spawn in the late fall. And so I started throwing a crankbait that color, and you want to know what happened? I started catching bass
on them.
And it's because they were focused on those really bright. I mean, dude, there's a factor as to why bass are eating a certain lure. I mean, you don't just go out there and hook it out there and catch a bass on it for no good reason whatsoever. I mean, you can. Trust me, you can. I've seen it happen before. I mean, just something crazy off the wall. But there's a reason when you get on a bite. Like when you can pattern a fish and follow that pattern, there's a reason why it's working. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, those are all great tips. And Ben, I'm sorry I'm keeping you late. You're over there yawning. Come on.
I got up.
My bad. Yawning on the show.
It's my bad.
Not that boring?
I was up since 4 a.m. and
I'm giving you crap, dude. So Fish Daddy with the donation. Thank you very much, brother. And said, what's your favorite topwater bait? Well, for me, it's a frog. All black frog, I think, tends to be the best around here in the Midwest. Rudd, frog, do you have a favorite color or a favorite, like any?
All of them.
Frog.
You had me at frog?
Just have me a frog. You said frog, I was in. No, probably my favorite frog color of all time is Freak by Spro. Just an awesome color. It does a good job of mimicking a whole bunch of stuff, but it really, really does look like a frog. And my fish will get like keyed in on the leopard frogs and like toads, like bullfrogs. And the belly on that thing looks just like that. And they just do, they go nuts for it, especially like walking a frog in open water. So
that's the thing that people don't think about or talk about enough. I don't think, people hear frog and they think you have to have sloppy, slimy, algae, really thick pads like Okeechobee. Yeah, I've told people that. I don't know how many times I mimicked what Jacob Wheeler did. I was watching a random MLF, and Jacob Wheeler was struggling to get a bite on a topwater popper or whatever around wood. He took a frog, and I couldn't tell you what it was, all white frog, cut the legs completely off it, and walked it just like you would a little walking bait. And he destroyed it. And I've used that, just walking it in open water, and it's like a weedless walking bait, big old sexy dog.
Absolutely. I mean, dude, I've told people, people ask me about, frog fishing. And when I say frog fishing, for me, there's only about a month and a half window where I'm actually fishing like grass and slop. The other 99% of what I do is open water frog fishing and putting the frog into places that no one else can get a normal topwater walking bait and walking that frog and just absolutely cracking their head in, and so.
I'll second that. I love that. Ben, how about you? Favorite topwater lure?
Frog, man. I've gotten on a couple frog bites, just not quite as good as you guys. So for me, it's like
I didn't say I was good. I just said I loved it.
No. Yeah, I'm not good at fishing.
They don't call me Ish DeBo. They just call me DeBo.
They don't call me Ish DeBo.
You guys don't know, Ish Monroe loves the frog, and he's an amazing frog fisherman.
He gets the
water get it. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
I like a walking bait. So like a one knocker or something like I can cover a lot of water with.
Those are fun too. And I know like for a lot of the growing up, I'm sure you guys did, with the ponds and stuff, a popper, right? Like it's hard to beat just a little,
so good.
2.5 inch, whatever popper on the ponds. If, you're doing bank fishing, great way to do it. Bloom, bloom, bloom.
Absolutely.
Splash.
My favorite ones, I've had this happen to me a couple times with a popper and a frog, where they'll come up and they don't blow up on it. They just like come up and open their mouth and just grab it and just ease back into the water. And it is the craziest thing. I mean, it looks like a orca eating something, and they just ease up. Literally watch the mouth open. They close their mouth on it and just go back down. And you're like, you stand there for half a second, like, oh my God, that just happened. And then you're just like, so.
And it's always the big one. That's like the big.
It's always a big one. Yes, the big ones. They just kiss it, man, and then they're gone.
This must have been. Were you fishing with your buddy?
No,
Is it the Ad Graham?
no,
Ben killed him on St. Clair today in Biggs.
no, but
He
I didn't
heard
kill
through
him
the
on St.
grapevine?
Clair.
Oh,
I just caught some big ones.
okay. Well, I was trying to talk you up here. Never mind. Sorry. Well, nothing to see here, people.
St. Clair.
Nothing.
If anyone's coming up to
Carry on.
St. Clair's popping off. So it's the time to be out there.
I mean, yes, guys, he did not catch any fish on St. Clair. It's horrible fishing. Don't go there.
Guys, I never fish St. Clair. It's terrible out there. So just never go to Michigan to
Please
fish.
don't go there. Don't ever
Hey,
fish.
I
the
have to
place
say,
like that.
the 2 times I've been to Lake St. Clair, I ain't caught jack crap. And that's a dead serious comment. That's not me being just like a smart butt. Like, I really have caught jack crap the 2 times I've been there. But it is a wild place, and fish do get caught.
Here's a fun one. The big question, right? We hear this all the time. Jig versus a Texas rig. I think actually Tyler's Real Fishing just did a video on this. I saw it pop. I didn't get to watch it. And I apologize. There's so many good anglers out there. Even, oh my God, my lights are falling off. There's so many good anglers out there. Even Ben and Rudd. I honestly don't watch their channels much. And it's not because I don't like them. Obviously, I wouldn't have them on my channel if I didn't like them. But it's just a time sake thing. I am, between kids and full-time job, working 50 hours a week. I wish I could watch a ton of people, but I saw Tyler put that out. I know he always puts out, stuff like us, good informational type videos, but anyway, I don't know why I got off on that tangent. Jig versus Texas rig. For me, the big thing is what I'm around. So the way I fish and the things we have here, especially fishing from the bank, I think like a 5/16 or a 1/4 ounce jig does a lot better around riprap versus if I'm trying to flip and pitch wood and cover from the bank, Texas rig all day. It's not even a choice just because of that weedless ability fishing from the bank. You have to remember if I get one hooked, in some logs or in a brush pile, I have to get it back. I don't have the liberty of driving over with my boat, to get it out of there. So for me, that's why I go to Texas rig around the gnarly stuff. Now I know you guys do a lot of more of the boat stuff. When do you guys switch from jig to Texas rig?
I tell you, man, for me, I throw a Texas rig a majority of the time. And I honestly think it's just a confidence thing for me. I mean, it's just always something that I threw, and I never threw a jig a lot. And that's why this year I want to learn the jig a lot more. I'm going to lock a jig in my hand and really figure that bite out. I get on a swim jig thing that's kind of special. But even then, all it is those fish are wanting a bit bulkier presentation, and I'm essentially treating it like a Texas rig. But I think it may be a forage thing, and but mostly for me, it's a confidence thing. You know what I mean? Like Ben, and I'll let Ben talk about this, but where Ben lives, those bass a majority of the time feed on bluegill, whereas down here with me, a majority of the time my fish are feeding on shad and crawdads. And so I think a jig is it's a bluegill, man. I mean, we may put crawl trailers on it, but it is one of the best tools to look like a bluegill or any sort of panfish.
Yeah, man, we talked about this last night on yours, but I really think there's like a line where a jig sort of like doesn't work quite as well, and then it picks up again in Florida where a jig just works like really well again. But like up here, I fish a jig a lot. And unless I'm fishing like super heavy cover and I need to get it like through the grass or like through a mat, like a jig does a really good job of imitating a bluegill, and you can fish it around pretty heavy grass and not be too bogged down. So most of the time it's a jig for me.
And I know a lot of guys will talk about, the hookup ratio too, right? You're going to have a better hookup ratio on an exposed hook of a jig versus a Texas rig plastic, especially if, you're struggling for hooks or whatever. You just kind of throw something on. If you don't have the right size or type hook with your plastic, say like a beaver plastic that has more meat to it, you're not using, either like a flipping hook or an EWG hook. Those plastics will tend to get pulled down and you can miss some more fish. So I know that's another reason a lot of guys will say, dude, jig is way better just because of that. You land more fish.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting because I would go against that and say, like, if you have an unpegged Texas rig, you get weight bait separation. And I've seen times where, like, pegging a weight, you're going to miss every single fish. And so essentially all the jig is a pegged weight. You know what I mean? And when I can get on that Texas rig and those fish are being a lot more finicky, I can, flip like a 3/16 ounce unpegged Texas rig. And when that bait is able to get away from that weight, when that fish sucks it in, there's nothing holding it back. It just, and it has it in their mouth, and I can jack their face. And so I think, again, it's kind of situational, and Ben's right. There's like a line, dude. Like, you get to Tennessee, it's like you pass the Kentucky border into Tennessee, and like, welcome to Texas rig country, all the way to like southern Alabama, and then welcome back to jig country. It is the weirdest thing. And I think it may be just the way we fish or what it is. But like, I got buddies, man, they would never pick up a jig ever. But if you said, hey, let me pick up a ribbon tail worm, on a ledge in the summer, heck yeah, that's Texas rig, ribbon tail worm. But they would never pick up a football head jig and drag it. And, my dad, who taught me how to fish, was the same way. Like, we just never threw jigs. We always threw Texas rigs, Carolina rigs, those kinds of things. So
that's the way it is here too. That's the way I grew up, during the hot summer times when you're trying to drag something, Carolina rig or a Texas rig on a bunch of wood, it was always a big worm. Tequila sunrise worm. My dad it's got to be a tequila sunrise, 8 or 10 inch, whatever worm he was throwing. So
heck yeah.
Funny. I have a good one. Do you guys throw the Man's Baby 1-? I'm a big fan of them.
That's a classic right there.
A lot of people talk about, ponds and smaller lakes where I can't throw a crankbait because I don't have that, deep water to throw. Boom. Man's Baby 1-. It's diving down maybe a foot or so. So you can keep that, just out of that bank, paralleling past that vegetation, whether it's over it or along that line. You've got to, and there's a bunch of other ones out there, but a really shallow diving crankbait or even a wake bait. And that's, I don't throw them. And maybe that's a good question we talk about now, since I have you fellas on. When do you make the transition from topwater, some sort of bait? Because my thought process is always, if I'm somewhere where I can throw like a walking bait or a popper, I'm going to throw it. If I'm not getting bites on it, I'm not going to go to a wake bait. I'm going to go to like, okay, maybe they want a spinner bait around this, or they want a swim jig. When do you guys, I don't know if you fish them much, do you guys fish wake baits? And when do you make that differentiation of, they're not really biting topwater, I'm going to go to a wake bait? Or does it, I don't know, any wake bait tips? What do you got? Throw them all at me.
So my wake bait experience as a whole is primarily focused around the shad spawn. I've never been a big guy to just throw a wake bait and get bites on it unless it's the shad spawn. And then I tie on the biggest, loudest, most god-awful wake bait that I can find, and I catch bigs on it. And I think it's just because in the absolute mass of shad, and for people who have never experienced a shad spawn, it's like a plague. I mean, like when they start to spawn, from the minute the sun cracks the horizon until they're done, when the sun is fully up in the sky, like there can be millions upon millions of shad up shallow. And the bass and the striper and every predatory fish in the lake just absolutely has a heyday on them. And so I always say it's really hard to get a person to eat a fake hamburger when they've got real hamburgers. Well, bass are the same way. It's really hard to get them to eat the fake thing when they got the real thing right there. And so I'll take like really the Jackal Chan wake is one of my favorites. Red fins, if you guys have ever thrown red fins, just big, loud, ridiculous wake baits, and start throwing those things. And I think just in the massive shad, the massive everything, and the chaos going on, that's something loud enough and big enough and just bold enough that it stands out. And usually if I get a bite on it, the big ones eat. So that's my extent of using a wake bait. I'm by no means an expert on throwing them. That's just that's where I've found success with them.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't really have much experience with like a wake bait per se. I threw it a little bit in the fall, a handful of years ago when I was trying to, compete in tournaments. But like the Man's Baby 1-, that for me is like they're about to get to the spawn through the post spawn, and then I put it away. Because like for me, it's like that kind of finessey sort of bait that you get those fish that are just kind of roamers to eat.
Okay. Yeah, because I know, and there's different levels of the wake bait too, right? Like so a couple of things I want to work on are some of the bigger swim baits / glide baits. Like that seems to be the cool thing. the past few years that's really picked up, right? You see this big, huge Swimbait deal, Swimbait underground, lots of garage baits. And, it's got this like special allure, and guys switch over from like regular bass fishing to only throwing these big baits, right? It's like an underground of things, it's its own deal within fishing. And it's intriguing to me because, I've just barely got my feet wet with it. And one day I did have good luck. I didn't actually catch a fish, but every single fish I had followed in was, I would say, at least 2 pounds or more. I had multiple 4-pounders. I didn't catch any, but it's that drawing power, right? And I know a lot of guys use them as just like a search bait. You get the fish to show itself and then try to follow up.
Heartbreaking, man. It'll make you want to quit fishing, dude. It's awful.
That big rat-looking bait you got looks so good.
Which one?
That big rat-looking wake bait.
Trying to think, the mouse one that I just got.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep. And that's what I mean. There's
sweet.
different levels of that. There's like, you've got rats. I've got like a big 3-piece that's like, I don't know, probably 4, 5, 6 inches long. I don't know how big it is, but shaped like a bluegill. You've got wake baits like that. Things I'm going to try playing with and see. Are fish gonna bite it up shallow? Is it, you've got crankbaits like I have like a DT looking deal that I picked up, which is essentially just an oversized crankbait, wake bait. There's so many different kinds out there, and I just, I don't throw them. I never think of going,
it's a Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole of an experience, dude. Like, I went down it and I've got a bunch of stuff. I've got the DEBO'S 250. I've got the big eye slide. Like, I spent the ridiculous amount of money on that stuff. And it's a culture all onto its own. And I got a buddy that is a mutual friend through Caleb Bass Quest. And that's all he does, man, is he just throws the big baits. He still throws conventional stuff, but like his bread and butter is big baits and catching big fish on big baits. And dude, it's magical. I mean, I've seen fish. Me and Ben experienced a fish together. I've experienced fish by myself that if you were to hook them, it would be a once in a lifetime fish. But just seeing them amazes you, because you go, I had no idea that class of fish even lived in here. In a local lake of mine where, 8 and 9 and 10 pound fish are not known to come out of, I drew every bit of an 8 to 9 pound fish off a tree one time. And just to see her was enough. I mean, it was just like, God, I didn't know she lived here. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big, that is a giant fish. That's a 24.5-inch fish. I mean, that's a huge fish. And so it's wild, man. I love it. It's such a cool thing to do. It's so awesome. So,
yeah, I want to at least get one. I've got a buddy here in Iowa, TJ Tucker. If you're watching, he throws like all the big bait stuff, and he's buddies with Oliver. Is it Nguyen or Nwai? I don't know how do you pronounce his last name?
Oliver Nye.
Yeah, Oliver Nye. Dude catches ridiculous big fish. The big bass streams guy. And I just put the comment up, YouTube, cuz big bait guys are trophy hunters. And, those guys are in that mindset of, I'm okay throwing this bait all day and not getting anything except for one bite. And for me, being a content creator and just the way I like to fish, I would rather have a day of catching 30-pound-and-a-half bass than waiting all day and catching 1 5-pounder. That's just me. I just like to catch fish,
Yeah, I think big swimbait fishing is really fun when you live around really giant bass. I think when you live in an area where, the potential for catching 10-pounders isn't there, the allure of throwing giant baits kind of loses its luster, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a cool thing to do, but the struggle is like, you can draw a bunch of 3-4 pounders with a big bait, but you can catch a lot of 3-4 pounders on other baits, right? Like up here, I could go down the bank with an S-Waver or, whatever. I could go down the bank with a bigger bait and have a shot at like a 4, 4.5, maybe a 5-pound largemouth. But then I could go down the bank with a jig or a chatterbait or whatever and have a shot at the same class fish. Like, the big, giant fish just don't really like live here. So I'm splitting hairs to try and catch them on a big bait. And that's why I struggle to like dedicate myself to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from a content, standpoint, if I don't catch anything, nobody wants to watch a video of me hucking around to a Swimbait talking to myself for 17 hours, whatever I was out there struggling.
You would be amazed, though.
Well, we have our loyal fans that would certainly watch us, but all the fair weather folks who rumble in would certainly torch me on it. I just watched this guy fish for 22 minutes and didn't catch a single thing, and he talked about how he likes Iowa and playing basketball.
Yeah.
I get a little.
He talks about how hard it is to fish this big bait all the time.
Yeah. He talks about how he sucks and he can't even catch a dink on it. Unsubscribe. You weren't even subscribed to me anyway, nerd. Get out of here.
Unsubscribed. It's because your hooks were 1/2 a size too big or something. Like they'd have to come with something you did wrong.
Oh man, yeah, we gotta love it. So let's see. I had another. So we had not a huge fan of huge glides. I throw a lot of wakes, crankdowns, and soft baits. And that's the thing too. Is like, kind of like you were saying, Ben. Is you can throw a lot of the same things. Like maybe I can't catch a fish on an 8-inch glide bait, but I could switch over to like a 4-inch paddle tail and still have an amazingly fun day.
And what's really cool, man, is like there are windows of opportunity where you're like, man, I know the bite's really good today. Like I'm catching them on a chatterbait, and I'm catching a bunch of them. I've kind of done what I want to do today. Then I can go pick up that glide bait and like try for a big bite or try for like a really cool fish catch or something. Like that's what I've done. So like I'll always carry a box where I have like a 8-inch. Oh man, I can't even think of it.
I still remember the day you were throwing that bone-colored Savage gear. Yep, yeah, I watched that video. That's the one that got me. I'm like, I'm doing.
I'll tell everybody right now, if you want to get into big swim bait fishing, an S waver, an Arashi glide, and a Savage gear, whatever that one's called, I always forget
185.
Yeah, dude, those three right there, you don't have to have, your depths and all that crap. You don't have to have $250 baits. Those $20 to $30 baits are plenty. And with modification, man, you can turn those into true fish catchers. So
yeah. But like if I'm having a good day, I'm like, man, these fish are biting, they're active, like this is my window to catch one on the glide. I'll pick up that glide, and if I catch one or two, then that just made the day even better. But to commit to it for a day or 2 days or 3 days under situations where I think it's right, but it's really not, then you're kicking yourself.
Yeah.
And just, some people just love throwing that big bait, and it's not even catching them. I think for a lot of those guys, it's the chance. It's the chance that I could catch the biggest fish in the lake today. Maybe I probably wouldn't do it throwing a 3-inch finesse swim bait, but I'm pretty sure I could do it on this. And like to a lot of guys, that's the allure, is they just love hucking that big.
It's like big deer hunting, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's guys who just want to kill giants, and like they'll kill 1-200 class deer a year, where I'm the guy that's out there wanting to fill the freezer. And so
I want deer
first doe first doe that walks by me. Yeah. First doe that walks by me, she's dead. So it's a mindset, man. It's a game. Like, and everybody, it's like playing chess and checkers. They're played on the same exact board, but it's two completely different games. And so like, if that's the game they want to play, let them play.
Yep. Yeah. Fishing. That's the thing is, you guys have talked about it before. Fishing is something different for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you only like to walk around and fish ponds. Maybe you love to get in a bass boat and try to catch the biggest fish. Maybe you just want to catch a number. It's something different for everyone. Silent Night asks, what's the best inch worm for a big bass in a pond? I think he probably meant in a pond, medium-sized farm pond type deal. So I'm guessing he's saying, like, what's the best size worm for catching big bass? Like, I don't think you can go wrong with an 8-inch worm. To me, 8 inches, like if I grab a worm, it's going to be an 8-inch worm. When you go into summer, the big worms do really well. For me, like a 10-inch worm, I'm not scared to tie on. Even 1.5-pounders, trust me. I know about catching 1.5-pounders. Even 1.5-pounders will eat a 10-inch worm. No problem. I don't know. What about you guys fishing a big worm?
I tell you, every situation where you just want to catch fish, Texas rig a 5-inch Cinco and go to town on their face. Okay. Like,
that's
dude,
real.
like, I mean, real. That's real talk. Like, dude, well, I'm with you. I'm going to throw an 8-inch bull worm and try to, like, I love throwing a big worm. It's something I love to do. But, like, if you just want to go to a pond and try to catch every dang on thing that lives in there, tie on a 5-inch Cinco Texas rig and just go to work on them.
And I'm talking a ribbon tail worm. I'm sorry. So, like, when I think of worm, I think ribbon tail worm. That's my dad's ingrained that. Sorry. So, like a 8-inch ribbon tail worm, they don't look that big. It's not like you look at a 6-inch Cinco, and those things are thick, man. They thick.
Yeah.
2 C's.
Yeah.
They're
But
girthy.
an 8-inch ribbon-tail worm, it's like you can use a 4-aught, worm hook on it. Like the actual body of the worm isn't even as big as my pinky, and I don't have huge hands. So
yeah, dude. I mean, that's like a 12-inch old monster, dude. I mean, it's 12 inches, but it's not a bulky worm, whereas an 8-inch bullworm is a whole different monster just because of the bulk.
I'd like to show just so I could. Go ahead. If you guys have questions, I couldn't believe when I looked over at the time. I thought we were coming up on an hour. We're at an hour 24. I couldn't believe. And you guys are ahead of me. So I'm not going to keep these gentlemen on past an hour 30. I am super appreciative to have Ben and Alex on to share their knowledge. Two great guys. If you haven't already subscribed to Alex Rudd and Ben Nowak, please do that. They are great for the community. But we'll take, for sure, guys. We'll take a few more questions.
You're awesome, Debo. For real.
Yeah. You're a cool dude, man.
I'm just a guy who likes to fish and help other people fish. And if we can all share the knowledge, and if all the bass community would do that, we'd be in a better place. And don't keep big fish. So there was a gentleman today, which it's a bittersweet deal for me because old boy was old. I say old boy about people that are my age, but old boy was actually old, sitting on a bucket, fishing minnows. And he had a pretty large, fishing manners, had a pretty large bass on the stringer. And he asked me, any luck today? That's always the thing. Any luck? Well, sir, there's no luck in bass fishing. It's a calculated, you go into that. But I'm like, no, man.
Calculated.
Yeah. And just a couple. He's like, oh, I got a good one. Holds up his stringer. And he's caught, I don't know, maybe like a 3.5 pounder. And to me, that's big because I've caught 1.5 pounds. That's the biggest fish I caught. He's got it on a stringer. Like it breaks my heart because old dude is just loving it, fishing a minnow and bobber. Fishing is something different for everyone. I wanted to say, dude, put that back, but at the same time, it's like, man, keep it and go home and grill it. It's your thing, right? I don't know. It's something different for everyone. Breaks my heart, but I look at it as he's thinning out some of the fish because a lot of these places are filled with fish anyway. But
yeah, it's that's a rabbit hole for me, right? And we won't get into it tonight. It's a totally different conversation. But I always like to pose the question when this comes up. Ethically, is there a difference between killing a big buck and keeping a big bass? And then I also like to say that, I've talked to like the fisheries biologist about it because it was for me for a long time, it's the same way. I was like, dude, put the big girls back because the big girls make bigger girls. You know what I mean? And that's what we're after. We all want the big girls. But the fisheries biologist essentially said, man, for the most part, you could have 500 boats on the lake every single day and everybody bringing a limit and never even touch the population of fish that actually live in any given area. But I think when it comes to like pond fishing and like some of the smaller water stuff that some of these guys do, like Ben, you do, I mean, like, I think you could have a serious impact on a 100-acre lake or a 55-acre lake. Whereas like my lakes that are 60, 70, 80,000 acres, you're not going to touch them. But like the stuff that some of you guys do, man, that's a whole different deal.
Yeah. And I think it depends on the spot. Go ahead, Ben. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, man, like these small lakes that are around us, these man-made reservoirs that aren't very big, it's a huge impact when people start taking a whole bunch of fish out of those lakes. We've seen it around here with some of these lakes that are kind of getting fished out because these guys they're meat fishermen. They'll go out with a worm and a bobber, and they're a limit of 5 bass.
They will keep everything.
They'll keep their bluegill. They'll keep their bass. They'll put it on the same stringer as their pumpkin seed and crappie. And it's look at what we got today. And it's every day.
Yep.
And so, like, if you're talking about these small lakes, yeah, it's a big deal. But you're talking about, like, Norris or Lots Bar or Chickamauga. Like, it's going to be hard. But at the same time, like, for the conservation and preservation of the sport, like, you have to have special year classes of bass for them to really grow well.
Yeah, only some bass can actually get that big, right? It's genetics. It's just like anything. Only certain people can grow 7 feet tall, right? You have to have, and you see it around here, like Fran McCaffrey's the Iowa basketball coach. He's got 2 sons that play for him right now. It's a genetic thing. And his wife played. He and his wife both played college basketball, and they have 2 sons that he's coaching now, right? You have to have, you look at like the Gronkowskis. Could you imagine having 3 boys that went on to the NFL? Like you've only got, you have to have that in you to even get to that. Same thing for bass, and that's what makes it such a hard thing. I did bring up this Greek Bad. I don't know what do you got going on there, but he says I've paid a fella $20 at the Coralville Dam. So Coralville is just like 30 minutes away from where I live, to put a giant wiper back. So funny thing is, I'm the same way, Ben. I've got a whole bunch of man-made lakes. Like to me around here, a normal size lake is like 200 acres. That's a pretty normal lake around where I live. Yeah. And one of the places that I fish is like a 20-acre lake. It's a cool little lake, campground on it. And some dude had like a 4.5 pounder and one of those like wire, it's got the black lid on it. You push it down in, one of those. And you have to open up the bottom to get the fish out. He had like a 4.5 pounder in one of those. I'm like, that's got to be one of the biggest fish in here. I'm like, dude, what are you doing keeping that? He's like, oh, I'm going to go home eat it. If it was stupid enough to eat my lure, I'm going to go eat it. I'm like, man, if you want to go eat, I'll take you over to lunch. I'm like, I will literally buy you lunch over there at Arby's if you put that fish back. And he's like, all right, cool. To him, it was just, he wasn't doing anything bad. Yeah, he's just like, I love to eat fish. And I'm like,
yeah.
And that's the thing, man. That. It's something different for everyone,
Me and Ben said that. I called Ben the other day. This is my brain. Welcome to my brain. And then I'm gonna hop off because I want to go. I'm gonna go watch the fight. But
yep, we'll close it out.
But so I called Ben out of the random. I said, hey Ben, I said, let's think about something, buddy. I said, in the world of recreational outdoor, like sport fishing, hunting, everything, bass fishing is one of the very few recreational activities where we actually put the creature back after we catch it. Like most of your saltwater guys eat everything they catch. Most freshwater guys, walleye, bluegill, they eat everything they catch. And then obviously if you kill a big buck, you can't bring it back to life. You're going to kill it and you're going to eat it. You know what I mean? And so it's such an interesting thought process. And like I say, it's a whole different conversation. You've got a huge segment of the population that all they've ever done is catch it to eat it. And they don't know anything different. Whereas sport fishing, we're a unique group. You know what I mean? Like, you got some trout guys that put them back, and then you got bass guys that put them back, and then like sailfish and tarpon, certain seasonal things like up near you guys, because we don't have that here, like seasons for certain fish. I just find it very, very interesting, that whole dynamic of how we do it and how everybody else does it, and all the conversations that can be had around that whole thought process.
You know who bass really aren't? They're like okay tasty. What if we made drum fishing the new thing? Because no one wants to eat a drum anyways, right? Like,
what if we just
catching
the drum was amazing? I had this drum grilled and it was better than lobster. It was amazing. If you guys catch drum, catch and keep drum.
I'm eating the next one. I'm eating the next one I catch.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're at an hour and a half. Alex Rudd, thank you so much for joining. Ben Nowak, thank you so much for joining. You guys are awesome. Ray EB dropped the donation. Thank you very much. He said, thank you guys for what you do. It's well appreciated. I know from all of us, we appreciate all of you watching us and supporting us. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again. Do you guys have any closing thoughts, sayings, anything?
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you for having me on. You're an awesome YouTuber, awesome dude, and you're like, keep the fight alive for guys like us who just love fishing and love doing what we're doing and just being us. Like I said last time when I had you on and we've talked about before, I was like, I was getting worried that there wasn't any of us left, and there's people like us left, and so I love it. And
yeah, we just love it. We just love fishing, and I appreciate like this community that you've built and you kind of promote, of guys that just love to go out and catch fish and have fun with it and be good people. Like what it really boils down to is like, you like to catch fish, you like to share that passion, and you're a good person. So I'm glad that there's community around that.
That's what it's about. Well, guys, thank you so much. Everybody who watched tonight and joined us. We had like 250 some people on there for a while. Thank you all so much. It means a lot. Check out these guys. I'll link them afterwards. But otherwise, thanks for watching. And until next live.